Excellent, and welcome to the TADSummit Innovators. I am really excited to welcome Mark. I have followed Mark on LinkedIn for many years. He is a no BS character, to say the least. I love his frank, open and honest commentary around all his experiences. So Mark, welcome and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. So before we get going, I just wanted to let Johnny have a few words to explain what's coming up with our Truth in Telecoms on Friday, and also provide a little bit more sort of color around the fast-moving story that is Jeff Lawson is innocent. We did the podcast yesterday, and the story has been moving overnight. So, Johnny, what's been happening?
Well, it's pretty ironic. We have a successful CEO that's already had a successful exit and didn't get thrown out like Jeff Lawson, and now started his new company, which is really how things are supposed to be.
Yes.
So, back to the insanity that would happen with Jeff. I mean,
yeah.
I don't think, obviously we gave our rant,
yep.
But, and he got his farewell. He hasn't even cleaned out his office, and the short sellers are already calling for a possible sale.
Yes,
so
crazy.
That happened this morning, and this is just typical. He's chumming the room right now.
Yes.
So you've got the short sellers, you got the long sellers, you got people circling, and by Friday, we'll have a mathematical view for you on, when you strip out the cash, you took a look at their run rate, and you strip out some of the other pieces they have, what is Twilio actually worth on it from a sale perspective? Who would buy it?
Exactly.
And so there's talk on both sides, but this is typical short seller. So when a short seller comes in and you somehow give him control and allow him to do what he's doing, this is a disaster.
I agree.
Or an opportunity. If you call your friends like Uniphonic or if
that's true.
Mark feels like raising some capital somewhere, because you need a savvy, experienced person like a Mark Hay to come in here. Not some guy from, whatever, that there was a CFO somewhere. What, are you kidding me? Yeah. So we'll go from there.
Yes, exactly.
Sounds
but
good.
I think it definitely
we'll talk Friday.
That quantified view, I think, will be very interesting, because we've already mentioned it in the discussion on LinkedIn. But I think the key is on that podcast from yesterday was just outrage at how Jeff has been treated. Full stop. I mean, he should be at a minimum the chairman, and to just be shown the door and thank you and goodbye. It's just crazy.
I promise you, he went kicking and screaming. He's not letting everybody know. Mark, you can, not that you went through that, but you get what I mean.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, it's a very clear picture. And then the CFO steps in, which is fantastic. Yeah.
So, Mark,
let's get into
you. And there's close parallels. But fortunately, you didn't have short sellers, activist investors coming in trying to kick you out.
Thankfully, yeah.
Maybe you could give a little bit of background to yourself, your HSL mobile journey, and most importantly, what you're building at the moment with Melrose Labs.
No problem. Cheers, Alan. HS Mobile. Well, back then, Hayes Systems Limited. That was formed in 1999 out of next to nothing. In fact, ironically, because of scheduling, I'm appearing today. I'm actually at my mother's house, which is where the business started.
Excellent.
This is actually fantastic. Yeah. So ISDN connections into the house and 2 meg E1 connections and such like that used to cost 25 grand a year and these sorts of things. But
yes,
the good old days, and we serve a rack in the corner. Yeah,
exactly.
It's absolutely
but that
fantastic.
Price point is one of the reasons why DSL took so long to take off in the UK. I remember presenting the DSL business case to the BT board, and they looked and said, "Wait a minute, Alan, we're getting like £50 and we're getting 20 grand. Where's the business case?"
Yeah, it's whether you went to BT or you went the others in the market. The price was way up there, and they wanted it up there. And and no wonder. 2 meg connection, love it. Thanks very much. But it was nice, reliable 2 meg connection when the power actually worked around here, which is okay. So yeah, that was 99. So the very long story cut short. HSL, the nice juicy bits in the distant history. Very first customer was BAA, British Airports Authority, and it was the IT guys at Heathrow Airport And they wanted to get alerts through to their mobile devices. This was like 99, and it was tying in with some monitoring system, I think Tivoli monitoring system that they had back then. They wanted to get the alerts down. I got pulled down there, sitting in front of the procurement. Person goes, "This is all great. How big's the company?" "It's just me." And that was just me back then. And they said, I think they looked at the tech person, and they said they wanted the service. So procurement person said, "You need to incorporate, want your liability insurance up to way up here because it's all airports and stuff like that. Thanks very much." And anyway, first customer, BAA. That was fantastic. But a handful of months later, on the back of that, got DHL. And DHL became the cash cow. That became the customer that really made the money. And ultimately, zipping a bit forward, that was why I believe HSL Mobile was acquired by Link Mobility, because we had the DHL customer. Now, Link Mobility and us were involved in a tender in the later years, and we had to re-tender for the DHL business. And interestingly enough, the guy from Link Mobility who headed up M&A when my company was acquired by them, he was the business development guy on the other side in this tender as well. And he lost out on that. We got to keep the business. And when I subsequently was hunting around for people to buy the business, he popped up again. Well, I approached them, and he popped up and said, "Yeah, we were the other guys. HSL and Link Mobility were the two last men standing in that tender. They lost out. We got the business. They already had some of the DHL business elsewhere, and this was the missing piece. So I think there was a little bit of unfinished business there. But
it's a great. That's a great story.
Oh, it's a nice one. Oh, there's lots of other little ones in the middle as well. But it's nice how things come around full circle, and you can see the full picture there. But you know, back in the day, it was seriously, it was a Nokia. I don't even remember, a Nokia 9000 communicator.
I remember
flip
them.
phone. That's how I got started. That was that phone connected to a server that dialed up ISDN, used an ISDN connection to pick up email from a POP3 mailbox, and that's how BAA was serviced back in the day. But within a handful of months, it was 2 meg connections, SMPP connection into what was BT selling its SMSCs. We were one of the fastest through validation, connecting to their SMSC platforms back in the day. That's early 2000. And that's when things started heading in the right direction, which was good. So but a lot more stuff to talk about, but that's it in a nutshell.
But I remember those days and trying to get SMSC connectivity. That took a long time. Was it just simply your customers were able to twist BT's arm because of all the other services BT was providing, or?
So I think that the reality was you had to come up with a name. So you had to have a decent brand that was one of your customers. You know, we were saying we were servicing BAA. We had the BAA contract, and that opened the door. You know, if we hadn't the BAA name, then we wouldn't have got the BT Summit SMSC connections in all likelihood. But we also wouldn't have got DHL as well, or it would have been more difficult to get DHL. But it comes down to, as one of the DHL guys very simply said to me in later years, we had something that nobody else had as far as they were concerned. And we were recommended, and someone just said, "Yeah, let's run with these guys," and that's where it ended up. And you know, DHL, well, why they wanted us in the first place was package tracking from just by sending a text message in, send the tracking number into a service number. Granted, we don't do that these days. You know, everyone's got better ways of doing these things. But back in the day, that was important for them to deliver that service, and they wanted to get that service out before UPS. And they got to market first via us. So that was the good old days back then. But that's that link. But that's one of the simpler but good uses of the service that we created. And back then it was very much, you know, trying to be flexible to the customer needs. Of course, you're going to bend to the customer to some degree, but some of the more interesting customers that we had on board. Now, marketing is a great source, of course, of volumes, but we would we love the tech. We love
exactly.
We love the innovation. We love doing all the interesting things. We love, drilling down the supply chain, as I used to say to people, and getting down to the SS7 level and getting the SMSC platforms in place and the interconnects in place, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
One of the more interesting use cases for our services was, I think it was a company that was based in Dubai that was a marriage between a merchant banker and an ex-SES guy.
Oh,
just imagine that marriage there.
Yeah, a little concerning.
So it gets summed up simply as you could be an oil exec in some hotspot in the world. You are equipped with a panic button,
Yes,
a device, a panic alarm, and you press that button, and it's going to send a number of modes of communication, voice, SMS, etc. We were involved in obviously the SMS part of it. So message got sent to a virtual mobile number, MSISDN, and then routed through to a control room in some windowless room in Dubai skyscraper somewhere. Which I think we saw one day, which was rather impressive. But in any case, so it's at that point when you press that button and you either get a telephone call or a helicopter coming over the horizon that you realize how important you are to the business. And that's what that was about. That's one of the more exotic ones. But another one was simply where we used to activate and deactivate the tsunami warning sirens around a mining complex in Indonesia. And it's these sort of uses that are particularly interesting. The marketing stuff, not so much interesting, but these sorts of uses are a lot more interesting.
Exactly. Those use cases are amazing. In fact, one of my neighbors, he works for a similar company where there's a disaster on a mining site in Africa, and they're doing the sums on what they send. Where basically, is it a rescue or is it dealing with basically body bags? And they have the spreadsheet. I mean, it sounds horrible, but and all the communication to the site is critical, especially if you're trying to get first responders there. So it's something you can't underestimate the importance in so many of these, sort of mining or industrial complexes. Accidents happen all the time, especially in some countries. Cool.
Good use of some technology.
Exactly. Now, SS7, I mean, I know we're going ancient history. We should focus more on the MaaP stuff, but I just have to finish off. Getting SS7 access to the carriers was a ridiculous pain in the arse. I mean, how did you get that first connection? The horror stories, the number of businesses that went up against the wall because they just couldn't get reliable access.
Oh, having any access would be good in the first place. I had data kinetics, I think DSC131 signaling gateway sitting in its box for more months than I would care to mention. You had to have the kit to be able to knock on the door in the first place. You had to build the software and such like to facilitate. I remember back in the day, I think it was M-Blocks got their first connection to Jersey Telecom. And it was something to do with the Coca-Cola campaign, I think. I can't mind something like that. But that's how aggregators got into the SS7 area. They took a slightly different approach, more a very commercial approach. Relationship with Jersey Telecom, etc., and managed to establish it there. We tried to use the rights and obligations that the telecoms framework provides, and in later years, or I say later, Communications Act 2003 came along, which gave certain rights and obligations, which you then every letter you send out to an operator reference those rights and obligations. Thanks very much, try and be nice about it, and they come back saying, I think in one operator's case, I won't mention the name of the operator, but they said it's going to cost us about £1 million, to build the SS7 firewall that they would need to build in order to provide the access to us. So that's a beauty. That's a go away. Thank you very much. But we had fun and games with a good number of the operators. Certainly, 3 was the easiest to get on with. I think Vodafone was sort of okay. The rest, varying degrees of problems. One particular one was T-Mobile. That was an absolute nightmare. Absolute nightmare. I think they were highly suspicious of why we were wanting SS7 access into the network. One of our lawyers just happened to be in a competition appeals tribunal with alongside what was at that point in time T-Mobile's head of legal, and our lawyer heard T-Mobile's head of legal making mention of my name in this competition appeals trial, as we're just sitting chatting on bits and pieces with one of their colleagues. And my lawyer said to me, the very fact that that head of legal is even thinking about you, Mark, means that they are highly suspicious about what's actually going on. Why do you want SS7 access into the network? Lo and behold, it might have been, to try and take their MO business off them in some weird and wonderful weed or whatever. But, that wasn't really the case. But it's these sort of fun situations. We ended up filing a complaint with Ofcom against one of the operators, and quite separately another more significant complaint of some description against the other operator trying to get access. Ofcom weren't overly helpful at the time, I have to admit. Things have changed over the years, and it's nice to see Ofcom taking a more, I'll just say aggressive stance with the operators with regards to their messaging activities. But back then, there was all talk about, we're going to park this complaint, Mark, and we'll take a look at having a market review. The market review, maybe 20 years later it happened. Or they're talking about it now. So that's the sort of thing. Or maybe 10 or 15 years later. But that's where things got to. But the SS7 ended up not being as worthwhile as we were hoping it would be. Part of the reason for going down that route was lower costs. Not having to end up paying, 3.1 pence termination charge. Having something that was more cost oriented. And in one of our complaints, we had an economist prepare all sorts of lovely figures, cost plus X, Y, and Z bits and pieces, the cost of an SMS message being next to nothing to the operator. But we're getting charged at something which is more significant. And that wasn't going to materialize. So, you just have to accept that at some point. But it did give us some interesting access for good, interesting services, primarily inbound and outbound SMS messaging for some things. And that worked out okay. But it was a challenge. We built the software. We like building stuff. Back then, we like building stuff in-house. Still have that approach largely. And it was interesting. Didn't lose my shirt over it, thankfully. But that was possibly nearly to come later on when we looked at femtocells, but that's another story.
That's another story in itself. But it is really good to understand the history in terms of why Link, that DHL relationship, you both fighting for that business, you won, so that created the desire within Link Mobility to.
I think they saw us as being, I think there was a significant overlap between some of the players in Link and the Link business and HSL Mobile in terms of DHL. The SS7 aspects as well, because one of the parties involved in the M&A had some SS7 background too as well, and saw some opportunities there. They, I think, had been the first in Denmark to get certain access as well, so or thereabouts. So it's
and then through that acquisition. What would you say is your key learning? What's your advice to any other entrepreneur that is going through that process? Because I watched it firsthand, via LinkedIn. Tons of learning.
Okay. Being cautious about how I word things, of course.
Of course, I fully understand.
I would. So, due diligence isn't just something that the buyer does in the seller. It's done the other way around as well. I would size up who is going to acquire your business as best you can. That is
exactly.
A term sheet is great, and smiles and promises and all these sorts of things are all great. But look at the history of their acquisitions. Granted, this party had done a lot of acquisitions at that point in time. There wasn't too much that was public. Didn't think it had too much to be concerned about. But I think. And you have to bear in mind, this is M&A, this is business. This is the sharp end, this is the rough end of business. And to be absolutely honest, that year of going through M&A was my worst business experience since 98, 99.
Yeah.
It was one of the most difficult experiences to go through. And then there's the afterwards as well, after everything's signed, after closing. That's, I've historically over where was it? 2019 through 2018. You were very selective about who you did business with. You were careful. You wanted to do business the proper way, run a very tight ship, and that was all good. So you pick who your customers are going to be.
Exactly.
So when it comes down to M&A, you start dealing with a slightly different beast.
Yes.
And the motivations you end up seeing, and it's not just in terms of the acquirer. It's the other associated individuals around the whole picture.
It's their ecosystem as well.
There's a whole bunch of players in your company and other companies as well. And you start seeing motivations and loyalties and such like change. And that was a harsh experience, I have to say, a harsh experience. But some advice: get to know who's acquiring you. As well, stick to your guns. In terms of a whole bunch of things. I'm so glad that it came down to looking at the sale and purchase agreement, the SPA, that stuck to the guns and a whole bunch of things. That was really quite important. That's good to have those protections in place. And at the end of the day, it's a transaction. And the buyer doesn't really give a hoot about you as an individual, and quite often they're also buying from other businesses, etc. It's very much a transaction thing. They don't care too much. But one thing I will say is that be prepared for the worst. We had an 11th hour situation where the acquirer in this case walked away. And I have my thoughts about that whole situation, and various conversations I had with various people back up those thoughts, and that's fine. But when you have someone who's been talking to you the last 10, 11 months, who has had full visibility of all the figures, and then takes the opportunity to say, actually, no, we don't like the latest set of figures, which are the same as everything else you've actually seen over the last wee while, you go, hold on, you're just playing a game here. And quite honestly, it did seem a little bit like someone was playing a game. But at the end of the day, the decision's left with you as the seller, whether you want to continue to sell or not. We came back to the table. This sounds all very much Soprano-ish, but in any case, we came back to the history repeats itself. Yes. So we came back to the table.
You're living nightmares for me. I've been doing this for 3.5 years. I spent 10 years between Irish Wireless and then restructuring Tintech. And we spent 3.5 years. You should go listen to podcast number 9. I talk about how we had a deal closed with Soprano. And then the private equity group, Scipio Partners, blew that deal. Then we had a deal with Evolving System. And that deal was blown again because Scipio Partner didn't want to take stock. It was a public roll-up. Then we had a deal with Cinch. And we chose, Scipio Partners and Thorsten Trapp at Tintech chose to go the public route. Then the public company we were going to do a deal with went and got an offer to buy themselves, got themselves bought. So we lost out on the Cinch deal. Then we spent 14 months with GMS trying to get a deal done. And it was the most painful experience ever. And so my paid cash, all cash up front, and it's a nightmare. We spent 3.5 years. So I got into messaging by accident. So this is great because we're going to start telling this Tintech story now, actually, because it's just coming about, and it's going to be a fascinating story, especially for somebody like you that has been through it, understands it. So watch the space with us, because we did a CPAS AI Truth in Telecoms episode. But the timing now to tell the story of, 3.5 years, term sheets everywhere. You're talking about 3.5 years of pain. And now we have a situation where everybody hates each other. And everybody wants to kill each other. So you brought up some nightmares for me, but boy, fascinating. Link Mobility. So Link Mobility, I didn't know too much about them. I knew about the Soprano deal, but I called them on the market. I called them at $8, doubling, and they've doubled. So I've called the market cold here the last few months. They seem to have cleaned their act up. They seem to be going in the right direction. Who knows? Maybe they'll come back again in a year or two and buy you again. History, you said it. History always repeats itself, right?
So did you not listen to the previous bit there? You've got to watch who...
Due diligence, it's two-way. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Granted, there's always a new CEO. There's always new leadership.
Oh yeah, no, I was just
Twilio.
going to say that as well. There's new faces. You know, the it's obviously kind of the CFO stepped into the CEO role now, and that's now permanent. And he's I would say he's a good guy. He's a good guy, and I've heard good things about
But what's
him.
your opinion of a CEO stepping into a CEO's role?
A CFO stepping into CEO? Oh, absolutely no way. I do not understand that. I do not understand that. Obviously, there's a lot of market appeasement going on here, but
it's very simple. It's a fire sale.
Yeah, that's true. But anyway, let's.
How much we make here?
We're coming up on time. I want to
knock down that wall, sell that wall, take that one. How much do we make here? How much do we lose here? Who are you going to ask?
Exactly.
Unless you're like Cineverse. Cineverse has got a CFO who is now the CEO over there because, well, they're just a GIMP. They're just a GIMP for the operators in the U.S. So, but that's a whole nother ball game. But they turned it around with the CFO. So the only time I've actually seen a company turn things around is with a CFO at Cineverse. He sucked $750 million out of Twilio. Well, not him, but he's sitting there counting it and he's playing that game. So, look, it's good to get your analysis on all this.
Yeah, no,
I'd love to have a follow-up.
I'm going to shift. We're going to have to go, guys. We need to move on. We don't make it too long.
Okay.
Melrose Labs. I see, all the stuff you're announcing. It's interesting. I know with you building it, it's going to be standards compliant and just work. So please give us an update on where you're going with Melrose Labs.
Fantastic. So I traditionally haven't been a great fan of RCS at all, and RCS, it's the subject of the moment, quite frankly. RCS is not something that I have historically believed in. SMS is dominated, continues to dominate.
Yes.
And as we all probably completely agree, Apple turning around and making mention of RCS does not mean RBM for RCS. And that could be a long way off. It might not be. You don't know, but it doesn't mean anything. Obviously, they have their own interests with their messaging, etc. That's their stuff there. But Melrose Labs is there to provide services. It's a business, and there's a lot of interest in RCS as a result of Apple making this announcement. There's a lot of commotion on the subject. So we've taken the opportunity at this point in time to step forward into that space and start building out platforms and offering platforms. Now, I love it when you start pushing bits and pieces out. You get your naysayers popping up who know the industry pretty well. And I'm not going to call them out on it, but it's a case of, geez, guys, it doesn't have to be like that, and that's the way that you make you make a buck on how you do things, and that's how these guys operate across here. It doesn't have to work exactly like that. Thanks very much. We've got problems with Google, obviously sewing up the whole market with the Jive platform, etc., and all the operators swinging towards them. That's going to create interesting problems for dominance in the marketplace and restriction of what APIs are offered for RCS. So we're, in our small way, we see a vacuum that needs to be filled by providing certain platforms using certain APIs, MaaP, not overly promoting the whole Google RCS API approach as well, offering an alternative, and tending towards the operators want to service customers. So it's the enterprises who want to push out the chatbots, who will have needs for using X, Y, and Z technologies, whether it be OpenAPI's assistant, whether it be Dialogflow, whether it be AWS, et cetera, et cetera. All these things. So we're creating the means for these chatbots technologies to be tied into RCS and make it as easy as possible. Some of the stuff is rocket science, some of it's not rocket science, and it always amazes me that some aggregators make a buck on some of this stuff. But
in any case,
well, we got a couple of companies. I got a couple of companies I want to send your way, obviously, because we're TADSummit, and we have plenty of innovative companies. Some very low revenue, some with some really great ideas. I've got two companies that I want to introduce you to, and I really wanted to talk to you about artificially inflated traffic, because that's our next topic. So you got to promise me you'll come back.
Not a problem at all. Not a problem.
Is that a promise? Because I'm sure you can in a pub over a beer probably tell us what's really going on over. I'm getting inundated with information around the world on who's doing what where. It's great. We're like the news channel where people just keep sending us stuff in. So I'd love to get somebody like you, a veteran.
Yeah, no, it depends on how many cease and desists I get after this. But I'm more than happy to have a sit down and walk through a whole bunch of bits and pieces. I would suggest not doing so over a drink because information might flow too freely and that might create a few more problems.
Exactly,
So
exactly.
But no, it's certainly good that there's a lot of shedding light on a lot of things that are going on just now, and I firmly believe in what you guys are doing as well. It's good to things are done a certain way, and those certain ways aren't necessarily all good.
Exactly.
And it's good to shed a light on things and show how things could be, show the problems that are going on in the industry, whether it be the operators, whether it be Hub guys, Cineverse, bits and pieces. I've been doing business with Cineverse on and off for about 20 odd years thereabouts. And I mind them back in the day when they were creating the hub back, we were part of what was SMS Forum back in the day, early 2000s.
Oh, yes, yes.
Yeah, and Cineverse's interest there was in what was SMPP 3.4 and SMPP 5 and the support for ICSPs and to carrier service providers and such like. And yeah, I knew the guys from across there then, and it was all this. Yeah, it was all quite interesting then as well. So
it was an old boys club.
I see some black and blues on your forehead.
Cool.
Hey, at least you didn't get taken for $750 million.
Very true, very true. I got taken for a lot less than that, but I got taken.
Right.
Yeah.
They take you all.
Yeah, yeah.
But this is again, I think it's great. Again, just your honesty in terms of the, circumspection on RCS. But given the announcements, given the strategies that Apple, Google, and the carriers are all playing with, it creates the need for somebody to fill all those gaps, to be the glue, to make it just work for enterprises, which is what you're creating with Melrose Labs. So it's really good to get your perspective on that.
Terrific. Yeah, no, it's good to there are a lot of voids in there. A lot of people haven't moved into the RCS space, and there are a good number of players in there, but there are opportunities for sure in terms of the platforms and being that glue.
Exactly. Yeah, and having all the way back to your beginning, having those compelling use cases coming from the likes of DHL or elsewhere, because that's what drives it and drives functional business rather than having a platform and come here and all the marketing buzz around that. It's those use cases define what I see as a long-term successful business. So again, Mark, thank you so much for being on. Really enjoyed this conversation, and I hope to see you again soon where we've got some other topics we can discuss.